Hello everybody, welcome back to Art Smart. Today I want to talk to you about Alice in Paris as it's written here on this Digiview cheap free, I mean it's not free, but this cheap $1 DVD I picked up. But you can also find it elsewhere under other titles. The main title and the original title is Alice of Wonderland in Paris. Now, Gene Deitch, I never say his name correct, but I'll put his name in the description down below. He is an animator, and he created many of the films that you saw in theaters during the 1960s. A lot of shorts, and he also created this feature film. And this was done in the Czech Republic. And this has kind of gotten a little bit of a cult following over the years. Now, this particular film is honestly just weird. The story is basically it's Alice in Wonderland, and she seems to be American in it, and she meets a mouse who gives her a piece of cheese that allows her to transport to Paris, where she learns stories about Madeline and just some French stories in general. It's French themed. It's kind of strange, and it's also a little awkward in that it's almost a little psychedelic. But honestly, let's face it, the whole Alice in Wonderland stories are kind of psychedelic as it is. So using that as a basis for this particular work is going to make it kind of weird like that. The fact that it also came out in the 60s kind of makes you wonder if they're, doing some things that were illegal too as they were making the film. But there's no direct evidence for that, so just put that aside. Anyway, it's cute though. It's very what's the best way to describe it? I would call it charming. It's a lot of very sweet, sentimental stories. The animation is done very simply. On the Wikipedia entry, whoever wrote it said that this is extremely limited animation, and I think extremely is taking it too far. I've seen much more limited animation than this, but it is limited. It's kind of UPA, maybe even kind of a step down from that, just because it has a lower budget. But it's definitely not as bad as some of the extremely cheap animation that you see, especially on the internet today. So it's charming. The stories that are kind of put together don't make a whole lot of sense together, and what they put together as the narrative story is weird. But also keep in mind, this particular director was trying to make films for the educational theatrical market. And he basically assembled a bunch of stories together into a feature film. And this was done as a common practice at this time by a lot of smaller time producers that were hedging their bets by basically making a feature film that could be broken down into smaller segments to make their money back, or they use smaller segments from theatrical shorts and then put it together as a film. This was done by a lot of producers, and this film is not particularly strange in that. So keep in mind, this kind of weird format with this very kind of broken up stories was kind of what they did at this time in order to make it work, and ways to make money. I think this is a relatively charming feature film to watch. The individual stories are okay. They're kind of slow Madeline stories, but they're very sweet. This is one that you may want to just kind of watch in segments. I think the segments work better than the film on the whole, but it's definitely not a bad film, and it's one that I'm perfectly happy to have on my shelf. So I would recommend that you watch it. Just maybe watch it in segments. It's probably more enjoyable that way. I will say I do enjoy the art style in it. It definitely has kind of that UPA style, and it's done very simply, and it's a film that looks pretty when you stop it. It's a good film to use your pause button and just kind of look at the individual animations. Even for an independent film, I think it's an attractive film to look at. So I would definitely pick it up. By the way, here in the United States, it is public domain, and my understanding is it's public domain throughout most of the world, but don't quote me on that. So you should be able to get this either free or cheap wherever you look. Hopefully this review of Alice of Wonderland in Paris, or as it says here, Alice in Paris, hopefully this makes you a little bit more art smart, and you'll come back for more art, film, and other types of creative art forms reviews. Bye-bye.